Hey everybody, it's Jasmine, and today I wanted to sit down and film a what's in my makeup collection type video. So I wanted to go ahead and accumulate all of my makeup palettes that are under $20. I have here around 28 palettes to share with you guys, and I thought that this would be a fun idea to kind of shop my stash and also give you guys some mini reviews on some of the palettes as well. I am also going to go in chronological order from the brand name. So I'm going to go ahead and start with A, and that is Alter Ego. Now this is definitely on my radar to do for a 5-day series, and I want to go ahead and talk about some of the palettes that I do have. Now first I have Temptress, which I think is their first makeup palette launch, and this is supposed to be a dupe for the ABH Sultry palette. This is a very cool tone shimmery palette, and I feel like I didn't buy the Anastasia one because I wasn't really on the market for a neutral palette, to be honest, and I felt like because this was $16, it was affordable, I thought, you know what, let's go ahead and try it out. Now these are a little bit of a drier texture than normal ABH shadows, but it does the job very well. Now they also have the Aurora palette, which is their newest launch. And this is a warm tone palette. I believe this is inspired by a Natasha Denona palette. And you know what? These are not the same formulas as the palettes they are trying to dupe, but the color schemes itself are really pretty. I do find that with some of these colors though, they do blend in with each other. So I like the fact that you have variety in some of the palettes where, you know, it's not too light and not too dark. It's kind of like a mix of everything. Out of all the Alter Ego palettes, the Daydream palette is supposed to be a dupe for the Huda Beauty, but I just feel like this color scheme isn't really exciting to me, and this is the type of tone palette that I want to mention that kind of just blends in with each other. And to be honest, it's not my favorite color story, and it's not something that I was looking for a dupe anyway. I just so happen to have it, and I'm really grateful that I do have it, and you will see tutorials using it soon. Now Sahara is actually one of my favorite neutral palettes out of the bunch because it has a lot of mattes to offer, and I feel like if I am going to get a palette, I want it majority mattes rather than shimmer, and this definitely gives it to me. If you're into olive and blue tones, I think that Goddess is a really great palette for you. I believe this is supposed to dupe out another Natasha Denona palette, and I feel like the shimmers in this palette in particular are really foiled, but they're also very dispersed as well. And I feel like when you guys look at my eye looks, I always have like a dispersed glitter going on, kind of like today, and this will definitely give you that dispersed glittery look. So if you like that look, you'll really like this palette. I just so happen to really like it, but if you're into more of like a compacted shimmer, then you'll probably not really like it. It's more of a preference thing in my opinion, but this is a beautiful color story, and I love the fact that there are multiple types of blues and the shades actually work well with each other. Like there's some green elements in here and it just flows. The next brand that we're going to dive right into is Colourpop. Now I've already done a 5-day series on Colourpop, so if you've missed that, I will have it linked up above just so you guys can see it. Now I wanted to start off with my all-time favorite Colourpop palette, and it is the most basic palette. I think out of all the palettes I'm going to show you guys, this takes the crown for the most basic, but it's my favorite, and they discontinued it. I don't know why they do that to me. You know, I feel like me and Colourpop now have issues, and I'm a little salty. Now this is the You Had Me at Hello, and I feel like one big reason why I love this palette is because it has a mirror, and I also love the amount of nudes and purples. Now it may not look like a bright purple palette, but I promise you, once you dig into the purples and taupes, your eye look will just really pop, and I just love the shades in this palette. As you can clearly see, I hit pan on 2 shades. There are really deep indents in the purples, and honestly, this is a well-rounded palette for me, and I feel like they tried to create a new palette, the You Are a Cutie palette, to try and take over this place, but you know what? This is still the best palette in my opinion, and she just needs to make a comeback, really, honestly, truly. If someone's selling this on like Mercari or Poshmark or something, buy it off them. That's all I gotta say. The She palette is one of my least used palettes from Colourpop, and I don't really know why. I just can't let her go. It's really pretty, but I think the main reason why I don't use this is because 2 of the 3 rows are shimmers. And like I said, I love my mattes more than I love my shimmers. It's a beautiful like Valentine's Day romantic palette, but because there's only 4 mattes, I just feel like I'm gonna gravitate more towards my You Had Me at Hello if I'm gonna do a purple eye look, or I'll gravitate towards like my Jackie Aina palette, for example, for a more pink look. It kind of just depends, and quite honestly, this looks brand spanking new, and I just don't use it because of the shimmer to matte ratio. I feel like Dream Street is one of those palettes where I am so happy that I have her, but I don't use her because it's a collaboration palette, and I just feel like Kathleen does an amazing job whenever she does collaborate with Colourpop or any other brand. She just really thinks everything through and through, and I love her color selection. Now, I love the fact that this has both warm and cool tones. This right here is a beautiful like bluish silver, and it kind of just complements the blues in here, and then you have the warm tones to complement the reds. And I just love the fact that this is a well-rounded palette, and I just love supporting Kathleen as much as possible. Alongside the She palette, this is another palette that I don't really use, and although I love Kathleen and I love the color story in here, I just don't know why I find this so random. I just feel like the color story here is just so cool toned, and then you get that one pop of orange with Aries. Which, I mean, I get, you know, because Aries are fire signs. I'm an Aries, fun fact. But I just find that this is something that I don't necessarily always gravitate towards. I do like the fact that there is a mix of colors, and I appreciate the fact that it has a mirror as well. I know exactly where I was and what time I bought this palette. I was at school, and I drove to school extra early just so I could use the school Wi-Fi to buy this palette, and I bought it on launch day at 10 a.m. and I felt like the baddest bee ever. But this is the I Think I Love You palette, and I feel like this is a beautiful like coppery bronze palette. I was really intrigued because it had a black, and I thought that because it had a cream shade and some other various browns, I thought, oh my god, this is like the perfect neutral palette. But just like the She palette, there's only 4 mattes in here and the rest are shimmers, which I feel like that is such a huge turn off for me, and that's another reason why I don't really utilize this palette. Yes Please is still so iconic. I used her literally the other day, and it's still amazing. You see I hit pan? That means I love a palette, okay? When you see the pans, it means these are bomb. I think for Colourpop, this was a great palette to start off their whole palette collection, because in the moment, I think ABH was the only company who really came out with anything warm tone, and then Makeup Revolution had their dupes, but it wasn't quite warm enough, and then this came in and it was just so fire. So I really like it. I think Colourpop eyeshadows are definitely my favorite. They do have some amount of fallout, but honestly, I think that the pigmentation, the blendability kind of speaks for itself, and I could look past the fallout. The Sweet Talk palette, this is one of my favorite palettes from Colourpop because it is the definition of well-rounded. I feel like with this palette, I have so many options. There's a Super Shock formula, there's a shimmer, there's a glitter, there's mattes. There's so much to offer in this palette, and unfortunately, I had to give this one a break just a little bit just so I could use some of my newer palettes, but I have used this recently, and I was kind of mad at myself for taking a break because it is so bomb. I really do love this palette. I have a whole review reviewing their collection, and it's just one of those palettes that just really speak to me, and I hope that this stays permanent in their collection. Now finally, the last palette that's under $20 in the Colourpop selection is the Sailor Moon collab. I have a whole review and tutorials using this palette, and I still have it in the box because I just cannot throw it away. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where it has to stay pristine, and I'm going to keep it in the box. This is a beautiful palette if you do like those soft pastel colors. The exterior itself is so cute and so amazing. I do have to say that the glitter in here, the Mere Serenitatis shade, it's not like the normal Colourpop pressed glitters. This one actually is really hard and it almost feels a little dry. Everything else I feel like blends in effortlessly, and I do feel like if you are a darker complexion, you might have troubles with the pigmentation in this palette. So I would always recommend like a concealer as an eye base or a normal eye base if you have one. But this is a beautiful palette, and I am so lucky to have bought it on launch day because I was so nervous I was not going to be able to get it, and it sold out within like 2 minutes. As I was pulling out palettes for this video, I realized that I actually forgot about this palette. JUVIA'S placed the Zulu. Now, I have been eyeing this palette for so long, and when I finally got it, I was super excited. Now, I do want to do a tutorial with this palette because I've been super into color lately. It doesn't look like I am because I'm wearing a neutral look, but this palette is definitely one that I really enjoy using because the shadows are so easy to blend, and I just feel like the shimmers in here are like no other. It's so soft, so buttery, so smooth, and this kind of just inspires you to play with a pop of color. Just like my Alter Ego palettes, I actually want to do a 5-day series featuring my ShopMissA 25 pan palettes. I've already done the 5-day series on their 9 pan palettes, but I wanted to go ahead and do a series featuring these because these are insane in pigment. Now, these are originally going to be limited edition, so that's the reason why I was kind of skeptical on doing the 5-day series anyway. But now that they are here to stay, I am definitely considering a 5-day series for you guys. Now, I do have reviews on all of these palettes, and I also want to mention real quick that I ended up giving some of my 9 pan palettes away to my friends because I recently did a palette declutter when I moved back into my house. So I don't have the 9 pan palettes to show you guys, but I do have the series on my channel, just so you guys know. So I wanted to start off with the Self-Made palette, which is my personal favorite palette out of all of the ShopMissA 25 pan palettes because this is so beautiful, so rich in color, and it is just amazing. I feel like the separation of colors here kind of makes it look like a mosaic, and a part of me also wants to see what it looks like kind of in line with each other, like all of the shades. But you know, aside from that, I feel like it is a really fun palette. You can go neutral, you can go glam, you can go bold. This palette literally has it all. And I love these big pan palettes because the shimmers and mattes work really nice together. And I also want to note that with these in particular, they work exceptionally well alongside ShopMissA brushes. XOXO is kind of what I wish that the She palette from Colourpop was. I feel like this just has more pink tones, warm tones, rosy, purples, and it just kind of flows a little bit better, and you have more variety with this. These all retail for $10, by the way, so it's an amazing steal. You get so many colors for not a lot of money, and this is a really pretty palette. I don't really reach for it often because I am not really the type of person to go rosy or pink or purple in my day-to-day. It kind of depends on my mood. Over the Rainbow is an all matte palette, and I believe that this is one of the prettiest rainbow palettes that I own in my collection. I do feel like compared to a lot of the formulas in my collection, this isn't the most pigmented, but it is easy to build, and I like the fact that you do get variety in here. So if this isn't pigmented enough for your skin tone, then you can go a step higher, and it kind of just gradually increases, and I kind of like that. I rather build my shadows than to have too much pigment anyways. I'm gonna hold up these two palettes because I have the same opinions on both of them. Now, the first one here is the Violets Are Blue. So you have half of it as like a purple blue moment, and then you have half that are cool tone browns. And then also they have the Vanity palette. Mine was smashed, so I had to repress some of the shadow, so it is a little messy. And these are all cool tone browns and purples. Now, I feel like for both of these palettes, I am not a fan of the color scheme. I am not really a cool tone person, and I feel like these kind of go hand in hand. So if you do like the Vanity palette, then you will like the Violets Are Blue, and vice versa. I think that the formula itself is really nice, but at the end of the day, I feel like Vanity has so many neutral, cool tone browns that it all kind of blends in with each other. There's not much differentiation between the shades. Like, there's not a lot of mid-tone shades or light shades to really balance everything out. So I feel like this kind of is more well-rounded, but they're both still the same to me. I just am not a fan of cool tone shades in general. If I decide to travel with a big palette, it's going to be this. It's going to be the Bare palette, and this is honestly one of the best palettes from ShopMissA in general, alongside the Self-Made palette. This is the best neutral palette that I have that is of this large capacity. Now, I love the fact that this has a cream shade, various cream shades. It has a beautiful warm selection, and then it also has this like cool tony, like brownish black, which I love for my eyebrows. So I could just pack one less thing in my makeup collection and only use this for my brows. And it also has a black in here. It's just one of those palettes that just works really well. The shimmers in here are so blinding, and it just works so well on the skin. I kid you not. I could use them as highlights. It's just one of those palettes, man. You can't pass it up. Finally, the last palette here is Immersed. Now, this is a very unique palette because it's kind of like Over the Rainbow, kind of like Self-Made, but a little bit different. Now, this has a variety of formulas. So they have metallics, they have mattes, and the ones up here in the first row, they're all iridescent shades. So you can layer them on top of the mattes and it will create like this beautiful shifty hue. And I kind of like that about it. It kind of makes this palette unique, but I feel like the one con is that there's not a lot of matte variety. So what you get is what you get. So this is gonna be like the only matte blue, this is gonna be like the only matte green, the only matte teal, and kind of like the Over the Rainbow palette, you kind of get that gradient effect with the matte shades, and that's kind of why I like using it. But I mean, if you pair the two palettes together, you get 50 shades and a million frickin' rainbow looks. How about that? I'm not the biggest fan of Morphe eyeshadow palettes, and I feel like I've told you guys that throughout the years. Through time, I just feel like the shadows age, they dry out, and I actually only have one Morphe palette, and that is the Morphe and MannyMua palette. Sydney got me this as an early birthday present, and I am in love with it. This is actually a palette that I've been using all month long, alongside the Tati Beauty palette. Those two palettes are kind of just going back and forth with me right now, so this palette I really like because it has a duochrome, it has warm tones, it has pinks, it has browns, and then it has these beautiful highlight shades, and I feel like they all blend in really easily with each other. But I feel like the only catch with this is that I have to use my Sigma brushes with them, or it's not going to blend the way I want it to, which, I mean, it's fine. I love my Sigma brushes. I mean, they're the first makeup brushes that I really owned, so it's fine. But with my ShopMissA brushes or my Kaleidos brushes or my Juno brushes, they don't really work well with this palette formula. And I believe it's because these shadows are pressed in really hard into the pan. I feel like for the past 2 years, I think you guys have been hearing so much about the PRISM makeup palettes, and I always say that this one right here, the Supreme Seductress palette, is my favorite. I travel with her so much. I've traveled with her countless times to Disneyland. She's my favorite palette, and I just feel like it's because it's half cool tone, half warm tone, and you just create so many looks just because you get variety in here. And I love the fact, again, you get like a cream shade, which is more of like a yellow tint, which is perfect if I forget an under eye setting powder. You get a black, and you get these really nice cool tone browns, which is perfect for my eyebrows. And the shimmers in here, they're great for highlighting, and what more could you ask for? This is, I believe, like 15 bucks. Super inexpensive, super affordable, and it is great, great quality. I feel like my eyeshadows blend in effortlessly and seamlessly, and this palette to me is one of my top tier palettes for sure. And if I'm traveling with it, that speaks volumes, dude. It speaks so much. Next in line is the Supreme Femme palette. Now this is kind of giving you the She palette vibes from Colourpop, as well as the XOXO palette from ShopMissA, but I feel like this is a little bit different because the purples aren't necessarily purples. They're more of a burgundy type shade, so it's still in that purple realm, but it just kind of takes it to a different place, and it's still very warm toned and very girly. This, I feel like, is a perfect mom palette. I think a lot of moms really gravitate towards these type of shades. It's perfect if you love that blushy look, and I think out of both of the palettes that I shared with you guys, the She and XOXO, this is gonna be what I look for as far as a pink and purple palette is concerned. And finally, for a pop of color, we do have the Supreme Chaos. Now this is a beautiful palette because it's half shimmer and half matte. Well, not necessarily all half matte. I mean, there's some here that do have a bit of shimmer, but These are actually really pretty. I feel like if you're trying to deepen up a look, kind of like the Juvia's Place Zulu palette, I feel like these two palettes would be great in conjunction with each other. They kind of just blend in with each other. The shimmers on this side is more like a dispersed shimmer. So like I said, I don't mind that type of formula. Maybe you might not like it, but all in all, I think that this is a well-rounded palette. And if you are looking for something to complement the Zulu palette, then this is something that I feel like will work really well. Next up, we have Makeup Revolution. Now, I wanted to go ahead and talk about my favorite palette, which just so happens to be the smallest palette out of the bunch. Now, this is part of their I Heart Revolution line, and this is their Nudes Mini eyeshadow palette. Now, it looks like this. It's really small and tiny, and for my eye look today, I mixed this palette with the You Had Me at Hello. So if you're wondering how I got this eye look, I just mixed the two of them and I mixed the nude shades. It was simple as that. And I really love this because the formula in here is so soft, so buttery, so blendable. The matte shades are immaculate. They have shimmers and metallics in here. So it's just going to give you this beautiful smoky eye look, and I love the fact that this is just travel friendly. You could just slip it in your pocket if you want, and it also has a really nice mirror. So this mirror can definitely show your entire face, and it's just so practical. Truthfully, I've only used their animal palettes once, so I'm not really going to talk too much about it, but I have here their Fierce Wild Animal palette, and this is all full of warm tones. I don't think anything's wrong with this palette. I just feel like compared to the Yes Please from Colourpop, I like that color scheme a little bit better. This one is just a little too red and too orangey for me, and I feel like on my eyes they all kind of blend in with each other, and I'm not getting like a super deepened or defined eye look. Now on the other side of the spectrum, they have their Integrity Wild Animal palette, and this one here is really pretty. I believe I have a tutorial on it on my channel, and I just feel like with this palette you do get a variety, but at the same time I feel like you also don't get a variety because there's only so much that you could do with this palette. I feel like this random pop of purple and this random pop of pink is just so awkward because when I look at this palette, I see majority of blue and I'm not really thinking to go into purple or pink, but that's just me. I think that it is a beautiful palette. Both of these are amazing formulas. They blend beautifully and effortlessly, as with a lot of Makeup Revolution palettes, so I'm not too mad at it. I also want to note that I have already done a 5-day series featuring the Makeup Revolution palettes, so if you missed that, I will have it linked up above as well, so you guys can go watch that as well. Now, I recently noticed that some of their newer palettes come in this little tin case, and I think it's really cool, but recently I feel like there have been a lot of comments surrounding environmentally friendly packaging, and I think people say that this type of packaging isn't environmentally friendly. I don't know about all that. Someone enlighten me. But I want to go ahead and talk about the Forever Flawless Fire. I actually only dipped into this like once, and I believe it was on Instagram Live, and from that time that I used this, I actually had to go into another palette because this was not blending for me and this was not doing me any justice, and from what I remember, it did not have a whole bunch of pigment to it. Same thing goes with their Forever Flawless Ice. I believe that this is trying to dupe the Jeffree Star Blue Blood palette, which I was kind of excited for because I was like, oh my god, I'm not gonna be spending $60 on a palette. I'm gonna be, you know, getting this bad boy. But honestly, this palette is really strange because it's not like the other Revolution palettes that I will be talking about. This palette formula in these tins, they just feel so dry. They are so dry to the touch, and I feel like when you're trying to build up color, you have to use a dense brush or else it just will fade away. So I don't know if it's necessarily worth it. And if you also watch my 5-day series featuring my Revolution palettes, you guys saw me use the Cannabis palette, the Chilled Cannabis Sativa palette, and even in that video you guys kind of saw me struggle with the application, and although the greens in here are absolutely stunning, it was just so hard to build its pigment. So with that being said, I am not sure if I 100% recommend the ones that are in the tin. I really recommend these small chocolate bar palettes, and I also recommend the Revolution and Emily palette. This is one of my favorite palettes. Even if it wasn't a collaboration palette, this is still top tier. This is still an amazing, beautiful, buttery formula, and I love it. It also has a huge mirror in here, and the colors are amazing. Now, I love Emily because in her videos, she loves a well-rounded palette like I do, where it goes from light all the way to dark, and this is what she gave the girls. You have greens, you have purples, you have pinks, you have nudes. Literally, what more could you ask for? It is just so nice, so wearable if you want it to be. It could be super colorful if you want it to be. It is one of those palette formulas that are so easy to build. I feel like I have no issues and my makeup looks good every time I use this palette. So I just wanted to say, you know what, if you're thinking about getting a big palette, this is it. This one, $20. The last and final palette that I have to share with you guys is actually my most recent purchase, and it is the Wet n Wild and Bretman Rock Jungle Rock palette. I do have a whole review on this palette on my channel already, alongside some of the other products that were launched with this collection. Now, I feel like with this palette, I feel like there were only two shades that didn't really work out for me, and that is going to be this beautiful teal here, which is Anaconda, and then this rose gold shimmer up here, which is Liar and a Cheetah. I feel like the rest of the palette is beautiful. The purple does stain the eyelid, so be cautious of that. And I feel like this palette is an amazing, colorful palette for the drugstore, and I think it's a great addition to the Wet n Wild collection. And just like that, you guys are up to my palette collection of palettes under $20. I hope you guys all enjoyed viewing my palette collection, and I also want to do another video featuring palettes $20 and up. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know what your favorite palette is that is under $20. As always, I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys later. Bye! Peace out, Girl Scouts.